become something of a national pastime to criticise South Africa's President Jacob Zuma, who recently delivered his State of the Nation address. This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight we deliver our own State of the Nation to ascertain the pulse of business. Joining me, Cas Coovadia, Acting Chief Executive of Business Unity South Africa, and Matsi Modise, who's Executive Director of the South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum. How many business organisations do we have in South Africa, Cas Coovadia?
Plenty.
I can't count more than 5 or 6 in my head right now, but it feels like there are a lot more.
No, there are a lot more. There are plenty business organizations. I think even in different sectors there are a multiplicity of organizations. And
because big businesses often want to be very critical of government and government policy, but government turns around and says, we talk to business, don't we? And we talk to this one, we talk to this one, but we talk to factions of business rather than to business as a whole. What are you doing as Business Unity South Africa to get this unified voice going for business?
Well, I'm acting CEO at Business Unity South Africa, and one of the things I'm definitely looking at is to see if we can begin to just look at the architecture of organized business and begin to avoid duplication, avoid people worried about their own turf, and actually bringing people together to develop cohesive business positions on critical areas of the economy. People can do their little stuff in their sectors and parts of the sectors and so on, but I think that we do need to get out of our little boxes, collaborate, to look at what's in the national interest around some of the critical issues we are facing, begin to develop cohesive business positions around that, and then engage government fairly robustly.
Matsi, are you one of those who's guilty of sitting in a little box and fighting in one corner, or are you part of the bigger debate?
I would say we are not guilty of sitting in our own box, but perhaps we should encourage a more collaborative effort. I represent the voice of the entrepreneurs, especially in the underserved communities, who would deem themselves as uninformed and mostly not necessarily having a voice in the big tables. So as the South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum, we would definitely like to have a collective voice when we engage with, with the government. And I agree with Mr. Coovadia that let us come together as, business organizations, but be able to represent truly the essence of the different sectors.
Sure.
Yes, it shouldn't just be one voice from big business. It has to be a voice from the guys on the ground, or from the guys in the mines, or from the, the business organizations. So it has to be quite reflective.
Okay, State of the Nation speech comes after the appointment of the new cabinet. In that new cabinet is a small business minister. A lot of people have been very critical of the idea of a small business minister, but they haven't met the small business minister, who is something of a firebrand herself. Have you had any interaction since the appointment?
Well, she has had a couple of public engagements, personally or within the framework of the South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum. We are still to have a meeting with her, but as a South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum, we do welcome this particular department in the government, because it's saying it's a small business development ministry. It's very specific.
You should be first on the phone list.
Absolutely, and we're getting there, and I'm quite hopeful. I think there's a lot that the country acknowledges the role of small businesses, and having its own ministry, I think we well on the right trajectory.
Critics of the State of the Nation address, Cas, will tell us that we've heard this all before. We've heard the promises of job opportunities and job creation. We've heard the promises of the rollout of infrastructure, and simply big business doesn't believe the promises of government or the plans of government anymore. Where does BUSA stand following the State of the Nation address this time?
Look, I think there were a couple of significant stuff. I think one, the President acknowledged that you need economic growth for social development.
Yeah.
Two, he actually said that under the leadership of the Deputy President and through NEDLAC, there will be engagement with stakeholders, and particularly with business, to see how we remove the obstacles to growth. He spent a lot of time on energy, which is critical to the economy. So I think that while, it depends on what expectation do you have from a State of the Nation address. I mean, people expect detail and so on. My own view, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get the very bad news. It's a sort of, hurrah South Africa kind of thing, and that's fine. But I think that there were some areas here that offers business the opportunity, I think, to take the lead, to put on the table some of the critical issues in the national interest, and begin to have some sound engagement with government on these. And certainly from a Busa point of view, that's what we want to try and drive now.
Mark Barnes making the point in Business Day fairly recently that we've all got to pull together. You might not like the coach of the team, but if you get the Springbok call-up, you don't decline to wear the green and gold. Or if you're Bafana Bafana and you don't like any of the last 30 coaches, you don't turn down the opportunity to play for the national team. What Jacob Zuma is saying to big business is, come and play for the national team. Whether you like what the party that's in power or the politicians who are in power at any particular time, shouldn't really matter.
No, absolutely. And I must say, I don't think any of us are playing for the national team, including government, with all due respect. I don't think any of us are actually engaging the national interest. We're all engaging from our little comfort zones, from our own agendas. I mean, it's not that we don't talk in this country. It's not that we don't engage in this country. I think we're just not getting out of our comfort zones. We're not getting out of our little agendas. And I think that that's what we need to do. So you know, when you look at unemployment, we can talk till we're blue in the face about unemployment. What's the critical underlying issue? It's education and skills.
Sure.
Okay, now let's talk about that. Let's talk about the harder issues, not the sexy ones.
Yeah.
And we all need to talk about them in a robust way. We all need to appreciate that all constituencies are going to have to make compromises along the way. But that's what it's about, and if we don't get this right, then I think we're losing an opportunity.
Clem Santa on this show and many other shows calls for an economic codessa. He calls for business to get together. All the different business groups, all the different interest groups, trade union movement, government, get together under one roof, Sandton Convention Centre or somewhere a little less opulent, and fight it out for however long it takes to get a new social compact. Is that what we need, Matsi?
Well, cohesion in many sorts is required, but the manner in which it's going to be done has to be reflective of everybody's interests, not just the government's interests, not just big business interests, not just small business interest. There'll definitely have to be a lot of referees in that particular CODESA because it's going to be a lot of noise. But some kind of, let's come together, let's speak as a collective, it has to happen. I
just love Cyril Ramaphosa's approach at CODESA in 1993, 1994, where it was sufficient consensus was good enough to move forward. Would that be good enough for the business sector? Certainly it would take us 100 steps forward.
And look, I think a business and economic CODESA is fine. My only concern is that, you know, I don't think we need to analyze anymore what the problems are, what the issues.
We know what they are.
We know what they are.
Okay.
And what I was very happy about, I read in the Business Day, the Minister of Small Enterprises said that she doesn't want to reinvent the wheel. She's not starting from a clean sheet. A whole lot of stuff has been done. There's a whole lot of issues on the table. We know what the problems are. And that's what we need to do. Let's agree on the problems, okay? And then let's now begin to see what we do about them. Small business, for instance, we've been talking about it. Somebody came to see me the other day, they want to celebrate the first small business summit under Madiba. Now, a lot of the issues that were raised there are still the issues today.
Of course.
And so we need to get down, roll up our sleeves and get down to the work.
Matsi, it all starts in your sector. I mean, it all starts with people taking initiative, people with great ideas who might need a little bit of capital, might need a little bit of hand-holding and guidance in the early stages of starting a survivalist business to get to a point where they start employing people. What would be on your wish list for Lindiwe Zulu if she walked into the room right now? She's not going to, by the way. This isn't Oprah.
No, absolutely. I think, like Mr. Cas has said, there are already a lot of initiatives over the past 20 years that have been put in place, ministries, departments, and how do we make them efficient? How do we deploy the right people with the qualified skills to be able to make them work? Because we have it. It's a matter of making it work.
Yeah. How do we make it work, Cas?
As I said, I think we need to get out of our comfort zones. I think, you know, quite honestly, we need to look at everything, the spectrum from, if you like, minimum wages to executive remuneration and everything in between. And you know, to me, it's not rocket science. If we don't, as critical stakeholders, get together, start finding solutions to these things, addressing inequality is not just government's problem, it's not just business's problem, it's not just labor's problem, it's our problem, okay? And if we don't address some of these things, we just don't have a long-term sustainable proposition. Whether it's for business, whether it's for government, whether it's for labor, it's for anybody else. So as SA Inc., I think that the solutions depend on the sorts of engagements we have, the sorts of compromises we're prepared to make, and whether we are prepared to actually talk about the hard issues.
Have we got time to talk anymore, Matsi?
No, we don't, but I think we should employ time to engage those at the bottom, because they're the ones with the problems. At the top, we tend to think these are the problems, perhaps these are the solutions, but more engagement from a bottom-up approach is certainly required.
We've just seen the end of the longest running strike in South African history, the costliest strike in South African history, where people who are employed fighting for a better wage, a living wage, for dignity in the workplace, all of these sorts of good and noble things. But there are more people outside of the work environment almost than in it at the moment who desperately need some kind of inclusion. Is it achievable in our lifetimes to get at least half the people who are excluded included?
What I would hope in my lifetime, certainly, but
Don't
it's definitely something.
You don't need
definitely something that is achievable. I think it's something that it has been the most expensive strike. You know, there's mixed sentiments in the market. You know, the ones that are employing the miners are like, okay, well, production needs to match the wages, and then the ones that are working are like, well, we've been working, and now it's a matter of how do we make sure we have dignified lives.
It's about putting, I mean, and unfortunately, Cas, too many people in South Africa live undignified lives. 15 million people in this country go to bed hungry every night. I mean, that is the real crisis beyond the short-term nature of wage negotiations and bargaining.
And that's our context, okay? So you know, and again, it's looking at the structure of the economy, it's looking at the structure of the labor market, it's looking at how we get SMEs going. And we've got to look at all of that within the context of the challenges and the problems we have. So you know, we have to create jobs, we have to skill our people within the context of a machine that's moving forward globally, that's challenging us to get involved in a very, very different type of economy. And so, you know, the world is not going to stand by and say, okay, get yourself sorted out and catch up later. The world is carrying on. The rest of the continent is carrying on. And I think that we need to get our act together, and we need to say, right, guys, it's not going to be ideal. All of us are not going to be happy, actually. You know, a good compromise is a situation where none of us are totally happy. So that's what it's going to be.
I'm going to let you go out and go do that. That was Matsi Modise, the Executive Director of the South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum, and Cas Coovadia, the Acting Chief Executive of Business Unity South Africa. Thank you for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.